Hello, everybody. Sam Tom here. So, this is my pitch for a sequel to the Batman 66 movie. And, kind of the way I'm thinking about it is if the show never got a second season, if instead they decided to make more movies, this is my pitch for what the second movie would be. So, it fits with the continuity of the first season and the first movie. Not exactly with the second and third seasons, although you can make it fit with a couple of tweaks, but we'll get to that later. Also, really quick, this is kind of a companion video to what I'm doing on my Patreon page, patreon.com/SamTomMiller. I'm doing something called the Batman Project. I'm watching every Batman movie and TV show, as well as reading a bunch of comics and doing a bunch of other stuff. And so I kind of wanted to do a companion video to that every month, because that's going through all of 2023. And for the month of January, the most minutes watched were definitely on the Adam West show. So I'm doing a video on that. But we'll talk more about that later. Let's get into my pitch. So the first movie had four iconic villains from the show. You had Joker, Penguin, Riddler, and Catwoman. So I'm kind of assuming for this pitch that those four are all in jail. What else is going on? So right off the bat, we're going to start with some different villains that also were featured in the first season. So we're going to have Mr. Freeze, we're going to have the Bookworm, and we're going to have the Mad Hatter. Now, in the first movie, the four villains all just kind of teamed up for no reason. And, their goals, it was about the whatever their version of the UN was. Batman didn't really factor into their plans. They kidnapped Bruce Wayne at one point, but not specifically because he was Bruce Wayne, just because they needed a kidnap victim. With this movie, these guys all have something specific that they want from Batman. Mr. Freeze, his condition is partly due to Batman's interference, so he blames Batman for his condition, so he wants revenge on Batman. The Bookworm is obsessed with books. So in this movie, he's working on a Batman biography, but he needs to know the secret identity. Who is Batman? Without that, his biography can never be complete. And the Mad Hatter, of course, as in the show, he just wants Batman's cowl for his collection. So these three characters all specifically want something from Batman. It's not just that Batman is a guy that gets in their way. There's something that they all want from him. Now, Catwoman is also going to feature in this movie, and you might be wondering, which actress is going to play her? Well, it could be any of them, doesn't really matter, but also it could be all of them, and I'll get more into that later. But Catwoman is returning for this movie, the only returning villain. So, what's going on? Well, we've got the three main villains, and they're each going to kind of have their own sequence of events. So, first up, we're going to have this, Futurama-style giant block of ice hovering above Gotham City, and there's going to be some kind of a demand made by Mr. Freeze, saying, give me this money, or I'm going to freeze Gotham, right? Or maybe not even an actual threat. Maybe it's just implied. There's just this giant ice cube floating above the city. Everyone seems to think that that's Mr. Freeze because that checks out, right? So maybe he doesn't even make the demands. People just assume that it's Mr. Freeze. So Batman and Robin go to investigate, and they notice that it's kind of weird because this isn't how Mr. Freeze's gun works. It doesn't make giant ice cubes. So this is kind of odd. But while they go to investigate, they find a lot of clues. And so they use their detective skills and they follow the clues, and it leads them to the hideout of Mr. Freeze. So they're like, well, this is really odd because it seemed this isn't how he operates, but it led us right to him. So, it must have been him. And Mr. Freeze, he's got warrants out for his arrest. He's done lots of other crimes, but he is adamant that this specifically was not him. But, of course, he's got enough that he has done that he's arrested and taken to jail. So then, sometime later, a giant book appears in town. This has happened before. This picture comes from an episode of the show with the Bookworm. But in the show, it was this very elaborate trap. It was made out of very strong materials. It's a cookbook, right? And he was cooking Batman and Robin alive, so it all kind of works, right? He wants it to be a quality piece. But when Batman and Robin go to investigate this new giant book that's on the streets, it's kind of like something that a middle school student would make for a class project. It's shoddy, it's hastily thrown together. There doesn't seem to be any point. Again, like with Mr. Freeze, the bookworm himself isn't really making any demands. It's just kind of there. And so, again, they're like, well, this seems odd. Like, the bookworm, he's very meticulous about his books. He would want this to be much better than this. I don't know what's going on. But again, there are clues that lead them straight to the bookworm. Just like Mr. Freeze, he's got enough warrants out for his arrest that they take him anyway, but he is adamant that this was not me. He's like, that is substandard quality. You should, like, how could you expect that I would do something that poor, right? But again, he's got enough that they've got him on. He still gets arrested anyway. Finally, we get to number 3, which is a giant hat. And for the purposes, we'll get into why later, but this giant hat is actually like a large inflatable raft that's out in the water outside of Gotham. And so again, Batman and Robin go to investigate, and again, they're like, this seems sus, right? This isn't right, because this is a raft. The Mad Hatter deals with hats. This looks like a hat, but it's not a hat. It's not very good quality. It falls apart as they get there. But again, there are several clues there that lead them to the Mad Hatter. And again, this is the rule of three. Three similar things in a row. He's got warrants out for his arrest, so they take him anyway, but he's adamant that this was not him. So we've got these 3 different criminals now that all have had something seemingly related to them pop up. They all claim that it didn't have to do with them, and really there were no crimes committed. There's just a giant ice cube, a giant book, and a giant hat, but like nobody was hurt, nothing happened. So something very strange is going on. But regardless of what exactly is going on, these are 3 dangerous criminals. They're now off the street. So there's a big televised celebration going on. Commissioner Gordon is thanking Batman for all of his hard work. And, he says with the Joker and the Riddler and the Penguin already in custody, and now with these 3 criminals brought into custody, Gotham City is safer than ever. And Batman says, yeah, and now that all those crooks are behind bars, there's no one to stop me. And he steals something. I don't know what. I'm assuming this television broadcast is not in the office like this picture is here, but like out in town. So maybe he snatches a necklace off of something. I don't know. Something that's just like insanely stupid, right? And then he just is away. Robin is not present for this, by the way, but Batman is just he has turned crooked and he leaves, and so the townspeople are all like, "Oh my gosh, has Batman turned on us? What's going on? What's happening?" Right? That happens all the time in the show. It flip-flops back and forth between Batman, I never doubted you for a second, and then the next episode it's like, Batman has finally turned on us. So the public, they're like, "Oh my gosh, Batman has turned on us. What's going on?" Well, we pick up later with Batman going into this shady-looking building, and that's where it's revealed that it's Falseface. Now, if you're not familiar with Falseface, he's basically this show's version of Clayface. He just doesn't have, clay powers. He just is a master of disguise. And so Clayface is the one that's behind all of these strange occurrences. And so what has happened? We are clued in. The show loved to tell you after the fact what had happened previously that you didn't see. It's a really easy, lazy writing trick, and they do it all the time, so we're doing it in this movie. So what had happened previously was that Catwoman approached Falseface, right? And she said, "Hey, Falseface, some of the biggest criminals in Gotham are locked up right now, but there's still quite a few guys out there. If you used your powers to take them down, rather than just, impersonating a bank teller to steal some money, if you used your abilities to take down the other big criminals in Gotham City, then, you'd be the only one left. And, I'm willing to help you out because I want in on that with you. And then you and I can run this town, right? Yeah, there's still people like King Tut around, but, he's, at this point in the continuity, he's got his brain flipped back to normal, so he's not doing much. So there's not a whole lot of other competition out there. And he's like, well, how did you escape from jail? Right? If the other three are still in jail, how did you get out? And she's like, oh, I have my ways, blah, 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 right? And so she's telling him to do this, and he's kind of like, well, if I could do this all myself, then why should why should I let you join me, right? Why don't I do it on my own, and then I can keep it all to myself? And she's like, if you try and work with she's like, in order for you to do this, you need to know where these guys are. You need to know where their hideouts are. You need to know how they work. You need the details that you can lead Batman and Robin to them. And they're not going to trust you on your own, right, to give you those details. They're not going to meet with you because they don't trust you, right? But everybody loves Catwoman. Everybody wants Catwoman around. So I will help you approach them, and I will help you convince them, right? She's being all seductive, right? I'll help you convince them to work with you, and then secretly you and I will double cross them to get them out of the picture, and then you and I can run this. And he's like, okay, right? So this has all happened before the movie even started, right? This is just, we're getting the backstory now as to why Falseface was setting all these, not traps, but setting all these events into motion to lead Batman and Robin to these different crime scenes, to these different criminals, and that's why none of these things really fit the MO of the criminals. So this has all been an operation of Falseface and Catwoman. But now, right, now that the plan has worked, all these people are behind bars, and now the public is turning on Batman, right? Now Falseface, he's getting a little big for his britches, so he's like, Catwoman, I've outsmarted everyone else, and now I've outsmarted you, and ha ha ha, and I'm going to take you down next, whatever. But then Catwoman starts to beat the crap out of him, and she tells him that he's under arrest, and he's like, under arrest? What are you talking? You have no authority to arrest me. You're an escaped prisoner. And then Catwoman reveals that she's been in disguise, and she's actually Batgirl. And so this is the debut of Batgirl, because we're not getting the other seasons in this version of history. And so Batgirl is now this new hero in town, and he's all confused, and he's like, oh, what is going on? And, and how did Batgirl know all of this information about these other heroes, and how was Batgirl able to convince them? So now he's very confused, but he gets taken in, and Batman and Robin show the public that, oh, that wasn't really me that stole from stuff, that was Falseface, right? So Falseface gets arrested, and so what is going on? How was Batgirl able to do all this? Well, this is where we get the three different Catwomans, right? So what has happened is that the real Catwoman, while in jail, requests to meet with Batman, right? Because there is kind of a love-hate relationship in the show, and there are certain episodes where they have feelings for each other. So Catwoman reaches out to Batman. She's like, Batman, I want to put crime behind me. I want to work with you, right? How can I prove that I'm willing to turn over a new leaf? Because I want to be with you. And he's like, well, actions speak louder than words. I don't know if I can trust you just saying it. But if you help us take down some of the other big criminals in Gotham, then you'll prove that you're on the side of justice or whatever, right? So they hatch this whole plan, right, to capture the four biggest villains still at large in Gotham City: Mr. Freeze, Bookworm, Mad Hatter, and Falseface. And so the real Catwoman met with Batman, right? And then later with Falseface. And then, if you want to go crazy with it, this is how you can have all three of them. Then Falseface, right, using information picked up by Catwoman. So Catwoman went and kind of figured out where all these guys were, got in good with their goons, whatever. But Falseface is the one who's actually making the deals with these guys. So that's the second Catwoman. And then the third Catwoman could be Barbara Gordon in disguise, right? Or it could even be Yvonne Craig dressed up as Catwoman, whatever. So if you want to do all three Catwoman, you can. It's kind of silly, but that kind of works. Or it could all just be just one. It doesn't really matter. Now, I do want to quickly point out, I know that there are also three actors for Mr. Freeze. I didn't really address that in this pitch because First of all, I don't think that's as well known that there are multiple actors for Mr. Freeze as well known as it is for Catwoman. But also, like, you could do one of them is the real Mr. Freeze and one of them is the false face Mr. Freeze, but that doesn't explain the third actor. And then also, if you're going to do that, then you need a second actor for Bookworm and a second actor for Mad Hatter. So that's just, it gets a little bit too complicated. So that's why I didn't really bring that up. One other thing that I want to throw in here. The story's done. We've concluded. But the first movie featured, other than the Batmobile, 3 major vehicles from the Bat Arsenal. One for land, the Bat Cycle with the little go-kart. One for air, the Bat Copter. And one for the sea, the Bat Boat. And so I think we need to cover all those bases again, but we need some new vehicles. So for land... This thing is called, it's called a couple different things. It's called like a land yacht and like a sand yacht and like a sail wagon. I forget all the different names. It's called a couple different things. It's basically a sailboat but with wheels. So why would they ever need to use this? Well, again, if you know the show, you know how silly it is. So I'm thinking that the giant book that appears is like outside the library. And so they want to stay really quiet. So they don't want to take the Batmobile or their motorcycles. My original thought was just Bat bicycles. But we do get the Alf cycle in season 3. You know, I tried to think of something different. So I Googled silly land vehicles and I found this thing. So we've got the Bat land yacht. Whatever it's called, I forget. Then for the sea, when they go to investigate the giant ice cube hovering over Gotham City, we've got the Bat hot air balloon. Of course. Why would you not want a Bat hot air balloon? And then when they go to investigate the giant inflatable raft, they are, of course, going to use the Bat jet ski. Now, you may be wondering, were jet skis invented by 1967? And the answer is, shut up. No, they weren't, but there were a couple things on the show that they had in Batman's arsenal that did not yet exist in the real world that later became real things. Probably the most interesting one is the Bat drone, which was like a reconnaissance RC type plane that Batman used. And like, that's a real thing now, but it wasn't then. So screw it. Batman has a jet ski before jet skis are invented. Deal with it. So that's my pitch for a sequel to Batman 1966. If you wanted to keep the continuity of seasons 2 and 3 of the show, there are a couple tweaks that you could do to do that. The biggest one is just that Batgirl wouldn't debut yet. So you would just have Catwoman be the one that captures Falseface and then turns him in at the end. And then there would be no Batgirl reveal, which is, you know, that could work. It's not that big of a stretch. You know, and like there are some episodes in the second season where Catwoman hates Batman, so like that's a little odd, but it goes back and forth, so I'm not that worried about it. So that's my pitch. You can let me know what you think of it. It's kind of dumb, but that kind of fits with the show. I do want to talk to you now a little bit about my Patreon. It's patreon.com/SamTomMiller. As I said, I'm doing a bunch of Batman stuff on there. I actually put up a new video every day in January. So I just kind of want to run through quickly what's up there if you're interested. Every Sunday, there's a video where I talk about a different collection of comics. So we had 5 Sundays in January. So one of them is about Batman comics from the late 30s and early 40s. One is the 1950s, the 1960s, Robin and the Teen Titans, and then the 1970s. Saturdays also had comics. I read a lot of comics for this month. So the first Saturday was comics from the 1940s. And then there's actually a book called The Bat Family in the 1950s that features like Batmite and Ace the Bat Hound and the original Batwoman. So I read some of that. Some Brave and the Bold comics, and then some Batgirl comics. Tuesdays were the movies and TV shows. So we had the very old 1943 Serial and its sequel from 1949. Then the next week I talked about season 1 of the Adam West Show as well as the movie. And then the next week I talked about seasons 2 and 3 of that show. And then this coming Tuesday, hopefully I'll have this video posted by then, is the very first animated Batman series, The Adventures of Batman. Every Thursday, I'm just uploading some gameplay of me playing Batman Arkham Knight. I'm replaying the entire thing from scratch, and so that's what those are. Mondays, it kind of changes every week. So the first Monday of every month is going to be a puzzle. The one for January happened to be of Clayface. I picked it at random. The second Monday of every month, at least until I run out, are going to be some Lego builds. So I build a Lego Batmobile. The third Monday of every month will be some kind of a book. Not a comic book, but another type of book. And so this one is for something called Batman Casebook. And then any other remaining Mondays in any given month are going to be just kind of some bonus stuff. So I did a couple episodes of crossovers between Batman and Robin and Scooby-Doo. And then there was an additional video about comics from the 1980s. And that leaves Fridays. And Fridays, I just color some coloring pages of different Batman characters. So the first Friday, I did Batman himself. Second one was Commissioner Gordon. The third one was Robin and Nightwing. And then the fourth one was the Joker. And then you can see, as I said, every month I want to do kind of a companion video. And that's what this is. That's what you're watching right now. But since February is coming up, let me show you what's coming up in February. So I forgot to talk about the merch. Wednesdays are just different pieces of Batman merch that I have. So like a mug, I realize does not seem that interesting, but if you watch that video, you'll see that I have a lot to say about it. Some Batman socks, some bobbleheads, some cups, which are different than a mug, believe me. So as we get into February, I'm talking about some action figures, some HeroClix, some weird trading cards that I'm very confused by, and then just some figurines that have a little weird story behind them. The Sunday comic videos in February are going to be The Dark Knight Returns, Batman Year One, The Killing Joke, and A Death in the Family. The movies and TV shows for February are going to be the second Batman animated series from 1977 called The New Adventures of Batman, the Keaton movie, Batman 89, as well as Batman Returns, and then Batman the Animated Series. That's going to be what most of my minutes were spent on in February, so my companion video for February is probably, my plan is to do like a tier list for all the villains from that show. I just got to figure out how to do a tier list. So that's what I want to do. I'm still working on figuring that out. Thursdays are still going to be Arkham gameplay. Saturdays in February is going to be more Arkham gameplay, specifically the side missions. So Thursdays will continue the mainline missions. Saturdays will be different side missions. The coloring pages, I'm going to have Catwoman, Clayface, Scarecrow, and the Penguin. And then on the Tuesdays, we've got another puzzle. I think it's just Batman. It's not a villain character. I'm building the Lego Bat Bike. I'm talking about a book called Batman 5-Minute Stories. And then the bonus, did I say Tuesday? The bonus Monday in February is going to be on the Judas contract. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm doing on my Patreon. If that sounds interesting to you, you can go check it out. There's a couple different tiers. One tier will get you just the comics. One tier will get you just the movies and TV shows. Or there's a third tier which will get you both of those and everything else. So that's kind of how that works. But that's all I've got for this. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you were entertained. Let me know what your thoughts were on my pitch. And if you have any other ideas for stuff similar to this that you'd be interested in seeing, let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day. Goodbye.